US has been talking about onshoring manufacturing and has attracted a lot of investments for new fabs. Does that also help with rebuilding global supply chain resilience?
There was a growing realization within the Trump administration, again, pushed on a little bit by the semiconductor industry, that there was a problem. And the problem was sort of the geographic distribution of semiconductor manufacturing. And one of the key issues then was the concentration of particularly advanced manufacturing in Taiwan. They now have 57% of global foundry capacity, and they have about 92% of that capacity at the most advanced nodes. But that concentration in Taiwan raised a lot of concern in the US and also in Europe too, right? And part of that came out of the pandemic and the global chip shortages, where there was concern that, wow, the US and the EU, both of which used to have a much higher percentage of global manufacturing capacity, now we're about 10%, right? And China's around 15, 16% of global capacity. So the goal became within the latter years of the Trump administration in the US to try to expand that capacity from 10 to say 20% over a period of time by doing what you rightly mentioned is promoting onshoring. And what that really means is the US government sort of adopting an industrial policy of subsidizing semiconductors. There's a lot of government support for advanced semiconductor manufacturing. So in a sense, the US is just sort of leveling the playing field. In general, I think you asked whether this is good for the industry. I mean, this is coming out of the pandemic and the global chip shortages. There's generally a sense that probably there should be more capacity in the global semiconductor supply chain. You're talking about a 2 to 3 year process to build the facility, get the clean rooms all set up and put all the equipment in, and then tweak the production line to get up to commercial operation. It's a very labor intensive and complicated process. And so these are typically $20 billion facilities if you're really talking about an advanced facility, even more so if you're talking about the most advanced facilities. So these are not things that companies undertake lightly. Typically, TSMC, for example, is very adept at gauging the demand for its manufacturing services. So if they build a fab, usually it's already booked fully for 5 years ahead by companies like Apple and Qualcomm that are all designing at the very cutting edge and want to have access to that capacity. And so the industry is very market driven and very driven by sort of advances in manufacturing and by companies needing to keep at the cutting edge. So even if the US is successful in its onshoring efforts, and if Europe is successful, and Japan has signed a deal with TSMC, they'll do some manufacturing in Japan and some advanced packaging in Japan. So it'll be good generally for the industry to be a little more geographically dispersed. Now, there's some concern about overcapacity because our company's building too many fabs. I think that's probably that's overblown a little bit because, as I say, companies like TSMC, when they build a fab, even if it's in the US and not in Taiwan, they're quite capable of understanding their client needs and of filling up the capacity of those places. So that nobody builds a $20 billion factory on sort of speculation. They have to have a really clear market need for that.